Hello and welcome back. In today's video we are going to be looking at a little comparison between DSM 6.2 on the left hand side of the screen and DSM 7.0 on the right hand side of the screen. That's right, a number of you are in a position where you are considering upgrading to DSM 7, and you know that I have been talking about DSM 7 a heck of a lot in the last few weeks since its RC release and final complete release from Synology. Now everyone can have it. I say everyone, much like you can see on screen, some series like the XS series here on the left hand side of the screen, they are still waiting for their DSM 7 upgrade. Now a number of you may already have a Plus series or a J series system that you can upgrade, and this video is going to be for you. It's going to give you some ideas about the differences in the way some things are handled between the two platforms. We're going to compare and contrast, we're going to talk some good, talk some bad, and ultimately help you decide whether you want to make the switch. Now I will highlight a few bits of feedback straight off the bat. First and foremost, those goddamn seagulls. That's right, I'm still working here at the coastal office, and try as I might, it's summertime in Britain, we have got seagulls all the way along the seafront there. Consequently, you are going to hear them, and I'm going to try my best to edit them out. But one particular seagull, let's call him Gerald, we always do, he is going to cut through, so I'm really sorry. Next thing I want to highlight is I will be utilising both of these windows like this here on the screen, with the left hand side of the screen being DSM 6.2 and the right hand side obviously being DSM 7. I could full screen them, but the problem with full screening them is you're not going to be able to see everything and compare and contrast. So do bear in mind when you are using this software, there's every chance that you are going to see things on a much more full screen level like that, when really you want to look at it side by side. Another thing I will highlight, sorry, before we go any further, although the scale looks different on both of these windows, I will highlight both of them are running at 67% zoom. So again, as you can see, 67%. So they are on an even resolution there with regards to zooming within Chrome. So the first thing we want to look at is, of course, the login speed. It's a big thing of DSM 7. So unfortunately, I can't kick these off simultaneously. You know, I've only got one set of hands. I wish I had a touchscreen. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up DSM 6.2. I'm going to log in and we're going to have a look how long it takes. And there we go. We've got there, and it is warning me there at the top, as you can see, do not use the admin account. Don't worry, this system's going to be formatted very soon. It's one of the few left in my building that are 6.2. Obviously, there isn't a 7.0 available for this yet. And now we're going to compare that against the login speed of DSM 7. So certainly a noticeable degree quicker there on DSM 7. Maybe it could have been quicker, but I know my network right now is rather saturated, but still, lovely little login speed now. Now, I've been talking about DSM 7 for so long that it's very easy to forget just about some of the differences between them. One of the earliest differences I think a lot of users will notice, other than obviously the login screen and the background, is, of course, the way apps are displayed. So, for example, if you do go into the app area, you will notice DSM 7 lays them out in a far more familiar pattern to a lot of modern devices that we have on our home and business environment, with like touchscreens and iOS and macOS and stuff like that. And on DSM 7, they are still using this menu structure at the top, which I know quite a lot of people actually quite like, because obviously this menu on the right completely obstructs a lot of the screen. It is semi-transparent, but it will cover everything that's on screen. So I think, again, this isn't something you can't really change. That's the only way to do it. But again, you open up the menu and it pretty much covers everything. Whereas there on 6.2, it's all in that lovely box area there. And if you did have a file open, so we go to the file station there and you open it up, you've still got access to it. Another thing I will highlight for later on in the video, occasionally there's going to be times like this where the window is too big for the split screen I'm running, so I will try to resize it, but we can't really have a go at the app for that because we're running this side-by-side setup here for the video. Again, we are using two very different powered systems. What we'll do next, we'll go into the control panel of both of these systems, give you some idea about how things are done differently on those. So remove file station there. And there isn't an advanced tab anymore here on the control panel of DSM 7. You can see up here we have that advanced tab which removed and added some options. I've always found the Synology control panel a little bit limiting. I know it is incredibly user friendly, and I think if you are new to NAS, you will enjoy, and particularly if you're a little bit of an IT newbie, you will enjoy the layout of Synology DSM, but I think a lot of more heavily advanced IT users will find it a little bit restrictive. But the options are largely in the same place. If we go to the advanced tab, you can see there terminals been moved around to connectivity there. A few different tabs there have been moved around. Security is there. If you go into the security app that's available on DSM-7, there's a security advisor. If you go into your DSM 6.2, you can have a look at the advisor there. I've not set that up. Let's go ahead. I'm going to run that scan. It's quite similar, and you will find, and this is another thing I will highlight. I've mentioned this in other videos previously. With regards to DSM-7, there's the occasional time, this isn't one of them by the way, where you will, I personally find that a lot of the design elements of DSM 6.2 don't carry as well into DSM 7.0, and there's the odd bit of graphical conflict. Not in a kind of broken way, but I just think some of the design aesthetics of DSM 7 aren't completely universal across the whole system. You can largely ignore these at-risk areas there. You can see this one I've already addressed earlier on. If we have a look into the package center there, we can have a look. And I think there's a lot more ready information. You can tell us having a go at us for those passwords there on Security Advisor, but it's largely the same. Again, if we come out of those real quick and go back into the control panel there and click on that security tab, we can see that that security tab it gives you a bit of information about some of the rules. We'll zoom in a little bit there about, when the system's in use, and the security tab there. We can have a look at it there. They've played around with a few of the options, but not too much. They're pretty identical. And again, they've reordered some of these items. They've moved the count around. There's a few little tiny changes there. Let's zoom back out. But the majority of them are largely the same. I will highlight, if we go to the top there, let's zoom out, close that down. Now we'll go into the user area. We'll go into personal for both of them. I don't know how many of you are aware, but Synology have got their own secure sign-in application now. So, for example, on DSM 6.2, you can use two-step verification if you choose there. But you've got a better method of two-step authentication, which includes Synology's own application or using some of those third-party ones. You are restricted largely to the third-party ones like Google Authenticator on this. But again, you don't have the same level of OTP support on DSM 6.2 as you do on DSM 7. If we come out of that there, again, we kind of looked at it earlier, but let's look at the package center. Again, I'm going to have to resize some of these windows. They have largely gone to a kind of this is where it is attitude in DSM 7. They've got rid of the kind of advert banners that we saw at the top, the ones that would advertise, well, not advertise is probably the wrong word, recommend certain apps. But I think a lot of people largely ignore these, if I'm honest. I think that's universal to a lot of brands. I think people won't really pay attention to these. They might glance at them the first couple of times, but not really much more than that. And again, another thing with DSM 7 that's worth highlighting is a lot of the applications that are featured on DSM 7, some of them still reside in beta. So Hybrid Share still lives in the beta area. It's not available for DSM 6.2. Synology Photos, which has been released, which is a full version, I would argue has a few features missing currently. I think Synology Photos, we will of course be getting onto photography between these two platforms. It's probably one of the biggest changes for individual app use between DSM 6.2 and DSM 7. I apologise for my squiggly mouse control between them. I've just got to accentuate my point. I know it annoys you guys sometimes when I'm moving around there. But again, we're seeing some of the upgraded application in DSM 6.2 not even make it into beta. They're just straight into packages, or in DSM 7's case, upscaled versions. But again, we have to really dig into them to find them. Now, for you business users that are running some Iscsi targets and LUNs, we can have a look at the difference between the SAN Manager and that of the Synology Iscsi Manager. So we go into it there. Where's Iscsi Manager? Let's find it. Oh, my eyes, my eyes. Where did I put it? It's right there, isn't it? Unbelievable. Sorry, I'm slightly further away from the screen than you guys. Cut us some slack. So we can have a look there. We can sort of look at these side by side. And again, they've reordered things ever so slightly, as you can see there. If we zoom into them, we've got the menus are slightly different there, but not a vast arrangement of difference between them. They've just kind of rejigged the options there. If we go through them, we got a little bit more information about the host. I think a lot of that is going to be because of a larger and greater degree of support of fiber channel. But with regards to creating a target, if we choose, if we go in and we want to create ourselves a target, we'll have to go into that there. So if we quickly create a target on both of them, let's create a brand new target there. You can see similar options either side. We'll call it target 1 on both of them. Similar options on both of them there. Again, tiny difference there. We can add a description of the target in the new one. But again, we can go into advanced features there. And there's little options all the way along. Moving along, go ahead. We've got the completion of it. And we can create that Iscsi target there for both of those. So let's go ahead and create a LUN now to live on that target. So we've got the target immediately. It's a 1 GBE target. LUN. So let's create a brand new one there. Got LUN 2, volume 1, Go for it there. And again, largely the similar options between the two of them. Again, not a vast arrangement. I would say that there's a few extra options in the original while it was keeping it a little bit more open. And again, we've got some of the security stuff there while we're trying to create a new target. Don't really need to do that. We don't want to create a new one. But if we use an existing target, I think, you know what, rather than trip over myself, I think we've proven there that the Iscsi Manager is largely the same there for creating those. File Station, again, it's another area where a lot of similarity. I would argue things look a little clearer on DSM 7. If you look between the two of them, it's quite similar. They've moved a couple of things around slightly. They've put that breadcrumb stuff all the way to the top. Rather than having those buttons cascade across, they've got a clear divide between the two of them there. And again, if we go into individual folders, we can go into some of that Plex Media Server stuff there. To remember where I put some of the Plex files. And again, files are pretty much displayed the same. You've got the same level of options there. Not a vast amount of change. Again, slight retweaking there of stuff in the background. If we go into the DSM help section, that's one that I've talked about before. And I've always highlighted how much I like the DSM help section. Particularly on DSM 7, of course. It's had a lot of upgrades and improvements. I've never really liked the Synology DSM 6.2 intro screen. I've liked some of the guides that you can find online as well. But I think a lot of the tutorial stuff, a lot of the settings, a little bit more intuitive in the help section there. All the way through, they can activate things from within the menus. Sometimes there's little animated GIFs and stuff that will give you real-time information about what you're doing. I think the help stuff is pretty good there. Moving forward, let's have a look at the resource monitor. Let's zoom out again there. And the resource monitor between both of these, let's open that up. Bring that to the top. And again, at a glance, largely the same. We've got a few options changes there at the top. We've got NF again with the network file system stuff there. And again, if we go into each of the tabs, we're able to see that monitoring's largely the same, but a little bit more real-time information readily available at a glance. I think they have minimized some of the text there. Remember, we are using the same zoom on both of these. Let's go for it there. Actually, no, reclaim that zoom. It's actually quite similar. We can have a look there about the way these are being displayed, of course. And again, utilization can range into the real time. Same thing with the both of them, but with this, there's a little bit more configuration, a little bit more options to play with there. Just a little bit more ready information there, something you're not really seeing there. Now, if you go to the Task Manager, that's largely going to be the same, just listing background processes across both of these systems. Speed limitations there that can be added to the system. And again, performance alarms and settings have changed, but not a vast amount. I think largely, if we go to the settings there, it's how much usage history you can maintain over time. And again, let's go for that there. They've just rejigged some of the options, made them a little bit more prominent. Some of the areas where I think the design conflict exists between DSM 6.2 and DSM 7. I think one of the big ones for me is Audio Station. I think Audio Station's design looks a lot bit more native in DSM 6.2, and I think although it's hardly one of the most overused apps, with most people accessing their media library on the NAS using third-party clients, I think the design of Audio Station is looking quite dated here on DSM 6.2 in a way that or on DSM 7 in a way DSM 6.2 managed to pull off quite well. So I think this is long overdue an upgrade. And I do think Audio Station is one of those unsung hero apps, particularly given its support on Amazon Alexa. You can, voice command your NAS and get that music playing out of your Alexa speaker, and Fire TV apps. I think it's a shame that Audio Station's been kind of done over there. If we have a look, Video Station, largely the same. It opens in a separate tab on both of these. So Video Station's not had a huge upheaval there between the two of them. So we can have a look at it there. They both sort of open up straight into Video Station. It's the same media files we've got there. I've not done any metadata scraping there. Really just looking at the user interface of DSM itself. Again, same goes for Surveillance Station. Surveillance Station's another application that's not had a dramatic increase. Unfortunately, I've not installed it there on DSM 7. But again, if you look at my DSM 7 review, you'll know that Surveillance Station came up and it looks largely the same. Even Synology Drive, a lot of these applications that open in their own portal window, they've not received a huge change. These ones that run in their own UI, it has to be highlighted that these are ones that have been developed and improved in the lifespan between DSM 6.2 and DSM 7. So while DSM 7 was being worked on, a lot of that design aesthetic into 7 was already applied into applications like Synology Drive. But let's discuss the elephant in the room. Let's talk about a couple of things that I think a lot of people are less happy about. I think obviously the first one is Plex Media Server. Plex Media Server on DSM 7. If you have migrated from DSM 6.2, it has not been a smooth ride. I've not really set up DSM Plex on DSM 6.2 there. And a lot of people who have migrated their data over from DSM 6.2 onto DSM 7, a lot of the directories changed because of the way Plex is installed. And they've changed that on Synology, and maybe, I'm not sure if that's Synology trying to change the Plex app to run on their system, and therefore being more reliant on on Plex to change their app so it's DSM 7 compliant. But Plex lives there within the beta area, and I know people have had difficulties migrating over between DSM 6.2 and DSM 7. But one of the biggest changes, for good or for bad, is of course Photo Station and Synology Moments. Now, I'm not sure a number of you are aware, and if you aren't aware, it's probably one of the first things a lot of people took on board when it came to DSM 7.0. It was that Synology were merging two very popular applications in the form of Synology Moments and Synology Photo Station into a single app. Sorry, my network is getting somewhat taxed, and the screen recording software is working overtime. But Synology Photos was the promised merge between these two applications here. It was allowing you to have the AI photo recognition, people recognition there that you found in Synology Moments. So we go back into Moments there. It had the facial recognition, all of that. So open that up there. And on top of that, it also allowed, you can see photos are being discovered now as we speak. On top of that, you also had subject recognition in Moments where items and things could be recognized. Now, one of the earliest sad things to hear about Synology Photos, because I actually quite like Synology Photos. I think it does a very good job of upgrading Moments. I just don't think it does an exceptional job of upgrading from Photo Station. Despite that, one of the areas that I'm quite disappointed is that tags aren't activated. Tags aren't seemingly activated at launch on Synology Photos. I highlighted this in my review, and I've gone into some of the early documentation during Synology Photos release, and it looks like that feature has yet to be implemented into Synology Photos at this time. I hope I'm wrong, and Synology, if you are hearing this, please correct me. But everything I'm seeing would suggest that tags, the recognition there that we saw in Moments, is not present in Synology Photos currently. Another thing that's not present, which is a real shame to me, and maybe it's hidden, maybe it's real far down, I couldn't seem to find it, maybe it'll come up in a later version of Synology Photos, it's that map. I think a lot of people would agree that the map view on PhotoStation, for those that travel a lot, is first class. The idea that all of my photos are then tagged, I've only chucked some UK photos there, but as you can see, I like the idea that photos are location mapped in PhotoStation, and that's an area where it's just not present there. We can flick between them very quickly from photo wall into timeline, into the detail mode where you can change the size of it, and then of course you've got your pre-made albums that you can do for sharing, and I would argue sharing is one area that is done a great deal better, I think, than most on Synology Photos. If we go into Synology Photos there, we can have a look at a photo. Let's find a ridiculous photo, presumably of my cat. There you are, little man. So there's, oh no, we didn't want that, we wanted a picture of the cat. Like, a lot of the metadata is maintained. Unfortunately, that is a photo that's clearly been taken from my social media. So unfortunately, that's not going to have any metadata. Let's find a photo that's got a little bit of metadata to play with. There we go. We found one with metadata. It's the one from review. It's an amazing steak. And as you can see, that Synology Photos there maintains all of that lovely metadata there and carries it over, which can then be utilized in creating customized albums. So to put that into perspective, we can use the filtering system, and then we can use different conditions there, whereupon we can search for different file types. We can search for different photos that have been tagged, different people, and then from that you can create those customized albums. So again, I think a lot of that, if we go back into the timeline view there, and from there we can go ahead and select that we want photos from 2020. We want photos that have got Gerard and Charlie there. And this will find photos that have got those people. And then what we can do is convert this into an album. So we can go ahead and start clicking some of those photos. So again, we can then, you can select all. We're not going to do that though. Again, you can edit those tags if you want. And then what you can do is you can either add to a new album to create a brand new one, or you can go ahead and share those photos. So again, we'll add that to the sharing area, and all of that information is readily available there. I think the sharing options that are built into Synology Photos are very, very good indeed. If we go for the whole album there, and then just for the photos that I've got both Gerard and Charlie there, we can go and then add to a brand new album. We can call that one G and C. Click OK. And now we've created our brand new album. So there we go. We've now got that album there, which again we can share or play with very, very easily. But I think a number of users who are moving away from PhotoStation, less Moment, I think, as mentioned, Synology Photos is a fantastic upgrade in my opinion over that of Synology Moments. I think it brings all kinds of features and functionality that Moments doesn't have. I'm having a bit of difficulty there showing up those thumbnails. I'm not 100% certain why. I think that's because conversion is taking place there in the background. But again, the displaying of GIFs, displaying of the photos and the information inside, it's all fairly straightforward there. But I think Synology Photos over Moments is just way, way, way better. I think a lot of people would agree that Synology Photos is nowhere near the diverse tool that PhotoStation is right now. And it's a real shame. And it might be one of the reasons that people choose not to upgrade quite yet, simply because of some of the features and functionality that are built into the control of PhotoStation, particularly photographers that use their NAS to host some of their shoots for customers and clients alike. I think the options and configuration that are built into Synology Photos is a little bit too basic by comparison. They are separated into tabs, but still there's less customization there, I think, and configuration and bespoke stuff, and particularly the linking as well externally. I think Synology Photos lacks a lot of that, and I think until they add a lot of those features, I think a lot of people are going to come away a little bit disappointed there with Synology Photos early doors. Also, and a few people highlighted that when they were converting over from a DSM 6.2 NAS onto DSM 7, they had to reorganize a lot of their stuff early doors. Fair play to Synology, they have provided a bunch of guides out there for this, but I do think this is an area that where an upgrade may be due. I might even do a dedicated video between PhotoStation and Synology Photos to kind of highlight a lot more of the precise details with regards to unsupported file formats in the future, and a few other bits involved with regards to AI and photo recognition, and maybe even a migration guide, depending on the reaction to this video. But moving away from Synology Photos, we can carry on looking at the two applications there, because a few of the last things we need to look at, let's be straight up, storage is a big area. It's an area that a lot of people want to know about, because a lot of people are never going to use all these other apps. You just want to know how is the system. I've already highlighted this in one of my earlier videos. For some reason, when it comes to using Chrome, for some reason this graphic thing happens. If I go into it here and I zoom in a little bit closer, then boom, it fixes itself. But again, still not great to see. And I did highlight this in the comments that I tried using Edge to display this, but unfortunately, have I got Mozilla on here? No, I've only got Thunderbird. Do I have Opera? A few people did highlight that Edge from Microsoft does take advantage of Chromium, so consequently they're going to be very similar. So perhaps another browser will tell us something different, but right now that little graphic thing is a bit of an eyesore to me. The caching area, rather than having its own separate tab there on the side like it does in DSM 6.2, in DSM 7 not only is it built into there at the front, but once you go into the hard drive area, you can do actions, you can play a lot with these drives, see what you can see on screen, or if you go into the storage pool settings, you can then, rather than go into its own SSD cache, they've consolidated it into here, where you can just click create and then create SSD cache. You can do it that way. So again, I don't have SSDs in there, unfortunately, to create a cache to show you, but that gives you some idea about what's possible. But some of the improvements, it has to be said, involved inside Storage Manager, they also need to be highlighted, because one of the ones that I am testing for a video coming up very, very soon is the fast repair function. Fast repair is when the system chooses to only build the areas of space that are occupied and then nil the rest of it, thereby significantly speeding up RAID rebuild settings. Now, it is worth highlighting, this does apply to the storage pool. So this is when the storage pool loses a drive in the RAID array, and what will happen is during the RAID rebuild, when you introduce a new drive, it's going to be looking at how much of the storage pool is full. Now bear in mind, storage pool and storage volumes are very, very different. So storage pool is all of the drives in their RAID. It's the wide area of storage. A volume, on the other hand, is the containers of storage that live on top of the pool. So if you've created one giant volume that lives on top of the pool, even if it's not full, I think that is going to negate the fast RAID rebuild. So do bear that in mind. But nonetheless, it's still a great little feature to have, and the Storage Manager also has those improvements in RAID 6 that we will be looking at. Both of them have got those options for speeding up RAID rebuilds, it has to be said. If we go all the way back to the overview there, go into the storage pool, we've got the configurations as well. But rather than putting it into these separate tabs, they've made it a great deal easier to follow by adding it just to these contextual menus overall. And I think even the overview, those that are quite new to data storage would probably prefer this more graphical display that shows the storage pools and the volumes. And yes, I hate seagulls. Even the drive menus, if we go into the individual listed drives, obviously there's more drives inside this DSM 7 NAS, where we're going to be utilizing this for a lot of our RAID 6 testing. If we go into the individual menus, we can go to the benchmark there, whereas in DSM 7 they've incorporated a lot of those options into a drop-down. We can still benchmark drives, and that'll give us some real-time information about the drives. Unfortunately, benchmarking of the SSDs isn't as effective. If you try to use the benchmark there, we can see that if we try to use it, and I've tried to run it previously, you can't actually use it, the testing to a significant degree there. But we can manage drives now, and the management of drives is something I actually quite like. So in here we've got an uninitialized drive inside our DSM 6.2 NAS, and we can do a secure erase, we can configure the drive, but that's really it. We can look at health info, and if we had a RAID degradation, we can put it there. If we want to create a hot spare on that drive, we can chuck it in and create a hot spare out of it. But what I really like in DSM 7 on the right hand side there is that you find a drive, in your list of available drives, such as these drives we've got for SSD caching here, select manage drive, and from here it tells you the options that are available and open to you. So obviously we're not able to use those SSDs for general storage. It's a real shame, but again, if we try to add it there, it's not going to allow us. As you can see, they don't meet the requirements because they're only for caching. But still, this context menu for drives within the Storage Manager, I quite like this. And if I was using a traditional SSD 2.5 SATA or I was using a hard drive, it would be great to be able to assign these nice and quickly, as well as some of those options that are more preemptive reactive rather than proactive rather than reactive. There you go. Ooh, language is my tool. But coming out of that Storage Manager there, I think we can largely wrap things up there. Most of the applications and services you will see haven't differed a vast amount. DSM-7 does have a few things still on the table left to be done. I think as the brand, first and foremost, there's obviously USB support. It has been highlighted that USB support on the DSM-7 platform has been notably diminished. I mean, with regards to network interfaces, for example, we can see here on the DS162 and XS Plus, we've got those 3 connections there, which is always good. But we might have wanted to add a USB adapter. Unfortunately, USB network adapters are no longer, or at least not currently, supported on the DSM-7 platform, along with a bunch of other USB devices are no longer supported on DSM-7. Whether that is because of the drivers supported by third-party companies on DSM-7 or DSM-7 restricting them, the jury's a little bit out on that one. But overall, I've got to say, if you are using DSM 6.2 and you're not using a particularly important USB device, maybe a USB network dongle, maybe a 4G dongle, maybe some of those network devices, storage doesn't really matter. Or if you're using ext3, or you are quite vigilant about photo station use, those are reasons not to upgrade. Okay. Any other reason, I think DSM-7 is definitely a safe bet right now. I think it's very secure. I think it's very fast. It's very responsive. Even though both of these NASes have been accessed on the same network, as you can see from the IP, they still run very, very well. And again, with the exception of users who are still avidly using PhotoStation, users who have very sophisticated Plex media server albums, users that have particularly useful USB devices connected that aren't storage, or users that are using ext3 storage devices connected with their system. Unless you are one of those groups, I would say DSM-7 is definitely ripe for the upgrade. And although it's not available for the XS and UC and the NVR and all the big high-hitting platforms, which does make you wonder, I think in every other regard, DSM-7 is ripe for the upgrade. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Sorry I overran a little bit there. I really got caught up on that photo stuff. If you have enjoyed this, click like. If you want to learn more, click subscribe. And don't forget to take advantage of the free advice section over on NAS Compares, as well as visit some of the guides listed in the description. Hopefully I've added the one there where I do talk a lot more about the differences between Synology Photos and PhotoStation and Moments. And hopefully that will help you guys decide whether to upgrade. I'll see you next time.